Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you please settle down so I can do the honors. Uh, I'm not sure, perhaps I have a feeling most of you were here yesterday when we started the session, where I had been tasked to give a more elaborate welcome address. But if you've missed that out, I don't think it's really your loss, because a lot of the subject area that I covered is known to you. You all are familiar practitioners. But just to kind of bring the focus to this morning's events, this conference has gone through very well. I take the liberty of mentioning that we've had some outstanding speakers, panelists, but some of the issues that keep coming to my mind, and which is really looking at the subject area today, is that the first thing is I read in the papers this morning that the good news is that India's markets are growing and India's economy is doing well relatively compared to other BRIC countries, where despite all the gloom in the global economy, outside of India, all the other BRIC countries, including China, are seeing a kind of downward trend in the economic parameters. But with assets of Indian banks, which are now in the range of $1.5 trillion and likely to grow further, because I'm told more than half of India's population does not have access to the banking sector. So therefore, as aspirations increase, as our middle class base increases, as professionalism increases, we are going to have more and more strain on the banking sector, which is doing a commendable job, but has been lucky, by and large, to my mind, being spared of the terror attacks that continue to loom large for Indian society. I mean, just look back and see if 26/11 had not been targeted at hotels but at banks. I think it would have sent our economy into a real tizzy. And in turn, all the feel-good factors that continued to be in India despite the global economic gloom would not have been there, because I think the state, the nation state, may not have been able to manage the level of catastrophe if a big hit takes place. A friend of mine was the head of security of Canary Wharf, and I did visit him. And as many of you know, Canary Wharf in London is probably the home of investments and funds in excess of $3 trillion or up to $5 trillion. I don't know the exact figure, but some of you would. But basically what Richard had done was, had created a sense of security and a security mechanism there, which made the bankers feel comfortable. Despite Canary Wharf being vulnerable, having water surrounding it on all sides, being a very compact entity of 900 meters by 500 meters, which if a proper organized attempt was made, it would send global economy into sheer jitters, not just the British economy. So I think what one needs to do is to look at, not look at an escapist approach that it hasn't happened to me, so I'm fine, let the other guy handle the mess that he is in. It will eventually catch up with all of us. And I think therein lies the wisdom to work collectively. And as I was telling Shelley, who's worked very hard to put this conference together, I think the importance of an event like this is to create networking opportunities amongst bankers and security personnel who head major banks, because you will never get an opportunity to interact closely with distinguished figures like Mr. Sivanandan, who bring in so much of experience that just by talking to somebody like that for a few minutes, you'll clear the cobwebs that surround your mind, that how should you approach a particular set of challenges. I think herein it could become, this event, I'm just predicting, and sometimes, it is said that it is foolish to predict, as somebody once predicted, that I think it's here somewhere, that Ken Olson, who said, I cannot imagine ever that there will be PCs at home. So you can be very wrong by predicting. But I think I can make an optimistic assumption that this could become the networking gathering for banking and security personnel, with something they could look forward to every year, as a kind of old boys do, which happens with various other institutions. So here's a thought. But more importantly, I think financial institutions being targets need to therefore look at creating a dedicated security force for the financial institutions. I mean, the Government of India did amend its rules after 2611 and allowed the CISF to be used for certain private bodies like Infosys in Bangalore. But look at the costs they have to bear. I mean, CISF doesn't come cheap from what I understand. And I went to the InfoCity in Bangalore 2-3 years ago, and I think Infosys was paying upwards of 30 lakhs a month for the CIF protection they were getting. But with a lesser pool given in by individual banks, you can look at creating a security force of your own, which is trained and suitably armed to handle all the challenges. After all, banking, on one side, bankers want to reduce the pressure on branches and therefore have created ATMs. On the other side, the same bankers feel that protection and security at ATMs can be, sometimes at least, from the impression I get, be taken lightly. Now, you can't have it both ways. You have to provide security at the ATMs. CCTV is the most overrated security instrument that we have in our modern times. Dil behlane wali baat hai that we have CCTV, so all is well. Thank you very much. Your daughter has been raped. CCTV will tell you who raped her. But how do you prevent it? And prevention is really, there are technologies displayed outside. I've been talking to some of the experts who've really gone out of their way to create technology which is carrying centralized information. Centralized information means, if a CCTV theft happens in Ukraine, you should know why did it happen and what procedures you must adopt to provide. Human minds will more or less follow the same pattern. Somebody sometimes asks me that how can you predict what the Pakistanis are going to do next? I said, because you see, if you study their history, there are a few patterns they follow. And one of them will obviously turn out to be, which is perhaps, may appear outdated to an analyst, but most of their planners say, last time, they tried to take Kashmir away in 47-48 by attacking Kashmir. They failed. Next time, they decided they will win the war in Kashmir in 65 by amending last mistakes. But Lal Bahadur Shastri preempted them by putting them into a checkmate in the rest of the Indo-Pak border, which they never calculated on. So I think what we need to do is we need to look at patterns. We need to be able to create SOPs, standard operating procedures. We need to share best practices. We are not sharing best practices because everyone thinks that, your best practices are so good that you want to have the edge over other banking security heads and impress your CEO that, look what my guy has gone and done. He's created a blueprint which will really work for me. Believe me, at the end of the day, as they say in the army, the best plans are put to rest when the first bullet is fired. Because you can keep making plans, but at the end of the day, that chap will do something which you never anticipated. But it's best to look at contingency. Two other quick points, and I will then invite our first keynote speaker. The first is, it is important to understand that in today's era, technology does dictate a lot of things. But again, to assume that technology itself will solve all your problems is incorrect and unfair, because the best problems are attended by the best trained men. And therefore, the Indian Army, which I've been proud to be a member of, and many of you have been also, goes again and again with the same dictum: train in peace and sweat in peace so that you don't bleed in war. So you have to train, and the only way out is to create security measures, create response mechanisms, create QRTs, create first reaction methodologies, and unless you do all that, just by putting the farce of two half-trained security walas on the gate who are looking inside the bonnet of the car not knowing what is inside, is not security. Ladies and gentlemen, security is a lot more. Security has to come from you within, that in your sleep, if you get a wrong phone call, you react. If you can't achieve that, you're still not there, as far as I'm concerned. And my last point is that technology itself, though a force multiplier, for security people is your biggest bugbear. Because all the internet scams that lead to banking scams happen through the ordinary user who's trying to be efficient. And his codes are broken in easily, they get in. All the dependence on cell phones, it leads to all sorts of compromises in security, which heads of security then have to waste time battling it out. So I think we need to, and here's a suggestion, we need to give to your end users a set of checks and balances, which is going to make the job of the banks in acquiring security better. So you can't just tell him, I'm giving you a debit card, so this is your, your e-transaction password and this is your number, happy hunting, carry on. But you have to tell him, you have to warn them. I don't see enough warnings coming except a cautionary one line to say that, make sure that your PIN is not passed on to anybody. I think we need to do a lot more. You need to educate. You need to, people do call up from banks and ask people that, are you happy with the services of your service manager? Which bank has made a phone call to a customer and said, are you happy with the security systems that are in place? Do you feel safe enough to do e-banking and internet banking? It's one thing to say that we'll send you the statements by email. It's another thing to ensure that that whole e-banking process is secure. And I think much of it will come out in today's discussions. And I'm not going to take any more time, except I take the opportunity to introduce our first keynote speaker. We have Dr. A.S. Ramasastry, who is joined as Director Designate, but pretty much is the Director of the Institute, that is Information Technology at the RBI, and he is also the Director of the Institute from October onwards. But more importantly, he's had immense experience. He has been a member of the Institute's governing body, member of the faculty of the RBI Staff College, has published books on quantitative finance, and has guided banks in Mauritius, Malaysia, Uganda, and various other parts of the world in trying to basically have better systems in place. Dr. Ramasastry is a doctorate in finance from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and was a top ranker in MSc Statistics from Madras University and BSc Statistics from Loyola College. Very, very distinguished credentials. May I invite Dr. Ramasastry, please, sir.